who's going to be their coach going forward. They have told their coach, Anthony Griffin, that they will be interviewing other candidates at the moment. So is Griffin's time coming to a fast end, or what's the situation at the moment?
Well, it's in his hands, to be honest with you. If he wins games of football in the next 2 months, then he'll hold on to the job. If he doesn't, then the Dragons are going to be in a position to move. And that's what this is all about. This is about being transparent with Anthony Griffin, that if the results don't go the Dragons' way, that the club's in the best position to move on someone else, like a Jason Riles or a Ben Hornby, Shane Flanagan, Dean Young, the names that we've heard. So I know there's been a lot of criticism of the club, whether or not this has just meant that Anthony Griffin's a dead man walking, but I ask
Which
you...
he is.
But, well, if they go and win, they're not going to sack him, Dave. He's off contract. They're not going to move on.
You just said they've done the right thing by being transparent.
Yeah.
We knew Anthony Griffin was off contract late last year. So why wouldn't they make the call late last year?
I don't disagree with you. I think they should have moved on him late last year. They should have...
But isn't that transparency? There's nothing transparent about what they're doing. They're asking the bloke to reapply for his job.
Well, he's off contract. What is he going to do?
He was off contract late last year too.
No, he has one more year. He's got 2023.
They're wasting this season.
This season's now in his hands. They haven't started interviewing anyone yet. And if he performs, and if they're 4 from 5 to start the year, you think they're not going to sit back and think, yeah, maybe the answer for our problems is actually internal here? We can continue with Anthony Griffin?
You say they're not interviewing anyone, but surely we're not naive enough to think they're not talking to managers behind closed doors about whether their clients are available and who they might be able to get. I think the writing's on the wall for Anthony. I mean, they basically pointed to the fact they're going to move on from him at the end of the year. I don't think... look, he'll have to have an extraordinary year this year to keep his job, in my opinion.
I don't disagree.
And that means not just top 8 go out week 1. I think they've got to go deep in the finals or he's gone. Well, and that decision will be made...
Can they wait that long,
Do you not think the decision...
Well, that's the point.
I was going to say, the decision will be made
finals.
before then anyway.
But that's the point.
It's the midpoint of the year.
If they win 5 straight now, make the call, re-sign him, and then bomb out at the back end of this year, miss the finals, what's served?
Maybe they won't make the call. If they're 5 from 5 the next month or so, they wait and hold off.
It's so offensive. It's poor leadership.
So what's the right way then? What's the right way?
Last year.
OK, we've passed last year, so what's the right way now? Don't say anything and go talk behind his back?
But we know you've got to make decisions because players...
Sack him. Or back him. That's it.
OK, so they're here now. What do they do right now?
Sack him.
Sack him now. And who comes in?
They'll find a coach or get through this season and appoint that next coach next year. This year is a waste. It's a waste.
Dave, I don't think you sack him, but I think you say to him, we're finding another coach. You can finish the year out, you make a decision. Because it doesn't matter if you sack him, you're going to have an interim in there anyway. They're not going to get Rolsey. He's locked away at the Roosters. They're not going to get Flano. He's got an agreement at Man.
That's true.
They're not going to get those guys.
Okay, that's
They're
fine.
not going to get Dean Young. They're not going to get Ben Hornby.
Well, they haven't done that.
They're committed to
They actually haven't been
now.
transparent enough to say that we're moving on from you.
Yeah, but I'm saying, OK, I agree with you. They probably should say that because I think the writing's on the wall for him. That will happen.
So do you think that the Dragons are tiptoeing around it?
Absolutely. I think it's weak leadership. It's poor because you're fence sitting. It shows no gumption to be sitting on the fence and having an each way bet on depending on results. When my point is, if they win the next 5 to 6 games, and that if what Mick's saying is the barometer of whether they are going to go ahead with him or not. If they bomb out and miss the finals, what's the purpose?
So what's better, Dave? So we've seen in the past, Newcastle with Adam O'Brien, they went behind Nathan Brown's back and spoke to Adam O'Brien. That ended in tears. Cronulla with Craig Fitzgibbon, they went behind John Morris's back. Is that the way to do it?
No, I think they've handled it poorly up until this point, right? And that they should have served it better by telling him late last year, even in the pre-season, we are not going ahead with you. You can either stay for this season.
They didn't have anyone else. They didn't have anyone else. If he would have walked, right? If they said you're not going to be coaching beyond 20,
they could have got someone.
But you know who they want, right? If they want Jason Riles, is that we're hearing that? They don't want Des Hasler.
If he walked, you get an interim for a year.
Then you waste another year.
You could have done that. Well, they're going to waste it anyway.
What if the interim goes well? There's no right way to handle...
You're just wasting under a different
So do they want
coach.
Jason Riles or not? Do you think that's the man they're after?
Well, I think he's on a short list. He'll be one of the... I would imagine he'd be in the top 2 contenders for the job, yes.
Would he have come this year?
No.
Exactly.
All right.
But I'm saying, you say to him, that's fine. You say to him, we're moving on from you in 12 months' time. You make a decision about whether you want to be here or not. And if he walks, then you've got to go and get someone else.
Do you think this decision from the Dragons is going to have a snowball effect to other clubs in certain who might not be, going that well and looking at the coach's position?
Yeah, I think there is. I think last year we saw, it was the Warriors who moved on from Nathan Brown first, and then a few days later the Tigers moved. Reality is there's only a few coaches that that are out there that are considered of calibre of taking to the NRL according to the clubs. So if you're going to move, then you move on the one that you want. And I wonder what Melbourne are thinking right now if they've identified Jason Riles, whether it's Billy Slater or Mark Bretnell, if they think it's Jason Riles and they know the Dragons are in for him, do they not start making inquiries to make sure that Jason Riles knows there's a job there waiting for him?
Yep, I think wait and see what happens with this story. All right, let's move on. Joseph Suaalii, will he be the first of many NRL players to make the switch to rugby union? What are our thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, that sort of money's not going to be an offer for every player, right? He's a one-off for me in terms of rugby. And the other guys were talking about a young cooler is an obvious one. I actually spoke to him this week about going to rugby and look, he sat in the fence a little bit because I think he's that sort of kid. He's quite shy and didn't want to sort of address the issue. But there's not going to be that sort of money on the table for young Tolu. There's not going to be that sort of money on the table for other guys that rugby might want to chase. And if there is, they're going to send the sport broke. And they're not going to do that. So I don't think it's a major concern. We might lose one more, but that's about it.
They want Cameron Murray ready. Do they get Cameron Murray, do you think?
He's contracted till the end of 25. That's not going to happen. That's completely unrealistic. And what are they going to do? Go to Cameron Murray and say, we'll give you $800,000 a year, half the money Joe's on. Like, why would Cameron Murray... That's a slap in the face for Cameron Murray. You know, he's an established established origin player. He's not going to turn around and take half the money of a kid who's 19... To change codes. It's unrealistic. And he loves South, I just think it's unrealistic.
Will Penasini's the one that I'm keeping an eye on. We all know he's a very tight relationship with Joseph.
Well, they both went to Kings together.
Absolutely.
They both played union going through.
They're great mates and they have a dream together to play together at some point. Now, whether that's NRL or in rugby union, time will tell. But he's the one that I know that Parramatta are also... Will's given his word and he's locked in with a contract, a recent extension. But what a contract's worth, really. I'll be interested to see how that one plays out with Penasini.
All right, should the NRL consider relocating a Sydney team, to Queensland?
Well, it's a redundant argument because there's going to be a deal put in place at some point this year. All the Sydney clubs are going to get lifetime, 99-year contracts to stay in the competition. So it's just not going to happen. I love Bruce Hatcher. I think he's one of the great characters in our game, right? And he loves, you know, poking New South Wales and sticking a knife in the side. But it's just not going to happen. It's unrealistic. And Peter V'landys has made it clear over and over and over again, I will not let a side die on my watch. So...
Yeah, I echo Rudy's sentiments because Peter V'landys has spoken at length about what the culture of rugby league and it's the rivalries and it's the hatred among the Sydney clubs and the tribalism and by taking one away, I think that you're only hurting the game in Sydney. And to Rudy's point, I don't see it happening. I see only growth for the game without losing a Sydney team. And
you would lose a bulk of fans as well.
Yeah.
We saw it with the Bears.
Is Bruce intimating at the West Tigers going to Perth? Is that what he's hinting at?
It was Cronulla way back when.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he's thinking now. He's just thinking one.
But even like the West Tigers, you can't just judge it based on performances on field. Like I look at the West Tigers, as much as they are struggling on the field, for that club to have the supporter base that it does, considering the amount of failures that it's had, it's quite incredible. Like to lose that fan base, and then also consider how important that Southwest corridor is in Camden, Campbelltown, that nursery of talent is to rugby league. It'd be suicide to let the West Tigers go to Perth.
Well, we were at Leichhardt the other weekend, that game between the Tigers and the Knights, and the fan turnout there for the Tigers.
Yep.
And even though it was going not,
they all left at half time, but
no, they didn't. They all stayed. That's what I was. I
left with about 8 to go.
They were all stayed, and they all just they watched it. And they loved the event of it. The Tigers have a really strong fan base.
Well, the other issue now is all the clubs make money now. You're not going to have a club go broke anymore. When Bruce said it 4 or 5 years ago, the first time, clubs were struggling. But every club makes a profit now. Money's not an issue anymore. They're not going to fall over. It's just not going to happen.
Well, speaking of the Tigers, where to now for the Tigers and the man that everyone talks about at the Tigers, Luke Brooks?
I feel like a broken
You can have this one.
Yeah, thanks.
You can have this grenade.
There are greater minds in rugby league than me to talk about what's going on at the West Tigers and Luke Brooks. It's just not working. And I said during the week, I feel sorry for him because he's actually recognised that it's not working with the Tigers. He tried to leave, the Tigers said no, and he's still there. He knows it's best for him and for the Tigers for him to move on. But the door's been closed in his face twice. It's just not working.
Can you see it opening again, the door?
Well, he's off contract.
Yeah.
He's off contract at the end of the year. The club was going to give him, I think, 6-8 weeks to see how he went before they determined whether they'd offer him a new deal. They were waiting to see what happened with Mitch Moses. They've now missed Mitch. There's not many halfbacks on the market.
No, that's the key point. There's not a plethora of quality halfbacks for the Tigers to replace Luke with.
And that club's shown, Tim Sheens in particular and Benji have thrown immense support behind Luke Brooks publicly and privately. So to then turn around and drop him now and cut him loose, it would be a big backflip. Because Tim as late as a week ago said basically Luke's close to unleashing, it's going to happen for him. So to then turn around a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later and say, no, you're gone, we don't want you, it would seem a rather dramatic backflip from Tim.
Where to now with Luke aside, where to now for the Tigers in general? Where do you see, what do you see happening?
The draw's horrific.
They had an easy start and then they didn't manage a win. Now it gets difficult. I don't know where they go from here because it needs to work. If it doesn't work with your two coaches locked in, if it doesn't work with Sheens, how can you then move him back into the GM role when he's failed to run the football program? And then you've got Benji who's working with Sheens. It just needs to work. Otherwise, I don't know where the Tigers.
I think
is that a dangerous move, locking in future plans.
The leadership of the West Tigers have hitched their wagon to the coaches, haven't they? Really, they've tried to provide stability by saying this is the direction we're going in. Personally, I believe the only way things will change is through a shake-up of the roster. From that, the coaches are safe, but the players, the next port of call will be shaking up that roster, and unfortunately, the likes of Luke Brooks and the guys off contract just.
The new guys have been pretty good.
Yeah.
Most of the new guys that have come in have added something. It's some of the older guys that have been there a while.
Yep.
All right, just quickly before we go, when do we expect to see Kalen Ponga back on the footy field?
A few weeks yet, I understand. We know that he's off to Canada for specialised technology and testing around his the brain measurements of the activity going on as far as how much impact the concussion has had. I'm still hearing at least 2 to 3 weeks away before we start to see him back on the field.
Get us on that junket. Never been to Vancouver. How good would that be?
This
time of year over there.
You need your brain. You should go get your brain read.
Kalen, get me over there, buddy.
We could use you as the
Exclusive interview.
baseline.
Get me there. Oh, yeah, good luck.